So the first thing you're going to need is a sewing machine. Any home sewing machine will work. The one I have is called a Singer Stylist. Also, you'll need 2 pieces of fabric, scissors, a seam ripper just in case you mess something up, and sewing pins. So the first seam I'm going to show you how to do is the plain seam. RS stands for right side, WS stands for wrong side. And what you want to do is place your fabrics so that the right sides are together. And the wrong sides are on the outside. And generally this seam is used for most fabrics of any weight. So you want to start off with your back stitch. You want to back stitch at the beginning as well as the end of your seam to secure it. And we're going to use a seam allowance of 5/8. And here's what the seam looks like when it's finished. Here's the wrong side of the fabric. The right side. The next seam is the French seam, and this is generally used for lightweight fabric. So you want to place your pieces so that the wrong sides are on the inside and the right sides are on the outside. Now for this seam, we're going to start out using 3/8 of an inch for the seam allowance. And I'll explain why in just a bit. So this is what the seam looks like after you sew the first part. Here's the right side. And what you want to do next is press your seam allowance to one side. And then you want to trim down your seam allowances down to about 1/4 of an inch. Then you want to sandwich your seam in between the 2 fabrics so that it's basically right sides together again. And then you want to sew along the seam. So basically you would sew it at 1/4 inch because the first time we sewed at 3/8 of an inch. So 3/8 plus 2/8 equals 5/8, which is generally the seam allowance that we normally would use. So this is what the finished seam looks like on the wrong sides of the fabric. And this is what it looks like on the right side. So the next seam we're going to do is the flat felt seam, which is generally used on denim, and you normally would see it along the inseam. You're going to place the fabric so that the wrong sides are together, just like you would for a French seam. And you want to sew along one of the edges. And you're going to use a 5/8 seam allowance. So this is what the first part of the seam looks like. It's the right side. And then this is what the wrong side looks like. So basically, you want to turn your fabric to the right side and press open the seam allowances. And you want to trim down one side of the seam allowance. I'd say trim it down to about 1/4 inch. The next part is you want to take the longer side and press the edges against the inside of the seam, and then just fold the seam allowance over so that it's covering the shorter side of the seam allowance. And you want to do that all the way down the seam. And this is where the sewing pins come in handy. And basically you just want to sew as close to the turned edge as possible. And make sure you do back stitch at the beginning and end of your seam. And also make sure you take out your pins as you sew along. You definitely don't want to sew over your needles because your needle could break. And this is what the finished look looks like. Or what the finished seam looks like, I'm sorry. This is the right side of the fabric. And this is what the wrong side looks like. If you look closer, you can see the stitches. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Also be sure to click the notifications button if you haven't already. And until next time, bye!